Hi, I'm Doc Palmer. I'm the author of McGraw-Hill's Maintenance Planning and Scheduling Handbook. It's their best-selling reliability book now for over 20 years. Maintenance planning and scheduling is a competitive edge for industry. It's not widely understood, even though the terms are obvious. Planning sounds like you want to tell somebody how to do their job, but rather we want to run planning as a Deming cycle, making plans better and treating the planners as craft historians. Scheduling sounds like you're telling supervisor how to do their job, but rather we want to treat scheduling as backlog research, and we want to fully load the schedules for the supervisors to defeat Parkinson's law. But it has to be okay to defeat this, to not complete the schedule. We're looking between 40 and 90% schedule compliance. That will give us a pop in work order completion rate of pure proactive work, the work that we have a hard time getting to that keeps things from breaking. We want to maintain, not be a fix-it group. Anyways, we're in chapter 6 of the book. We've spent the last several episodes looking at some of the plan job examples in the handbook, Appendix D primarily. But chapter 6 has 2 examples of actually putting a schedule together. We're actually going to create the labor forecast today, and then in a subsequent episode we'll actually sort the backlog and match that together with the labor forecast, making comments along the way. So to begin with, I'm going to take the labor forecast. This is for a maintenance crew, mechanical maintenance crew that works a 10-hour shift. So we'll presume for our discussion they work Monday through Thursday. This crew consists of 5 persons, a skilled welder, okay, we'll put welder there, an apprentice. Now, we don't plan work for apprentices. We don't schedule work for apprentices, but we have apprentices on our crews. We consider them as helpers as far as the planning and scheduling exercise. So where we see apprentice, we'll put helper. Now, there are rules in apprenticeship programs. You can only use apprentices for certain types of jobs where maybe there's a learning opportunity or a practice opportunity. They have to be checked up on or worked with somebody. All that's taken care of, and it generally comes out in the wash with the supervisors looking at the work we have to do and judiciously using their apprentices and making sure they get that attention. So as far as we're concerned, and I'm speaking very generally, not specifically to your situation if it's different, but generally we can treat that as it comes out and we take care of that. We're definitely not trying to skimp on our apprenticeship program and training opportunities. There's a painter on this crew. And 2 mechanics. Okay, so there's 1 welder, 2 mechanics, 1 painter, and 1 helper. Now, scheduling has more politics in it than the planning part. As soon as you understand you can't be perfect as a planner, you can plan a lot of work, and you can try to encourage feedback to make the plans better. And when you have extra time, make plans better over the years. Scheduling, what we're trying to do is do the grunt work, backlog research. We're not trying to ram a schedule down a supervisor's throat because they can't schedule their people. We're trying to dig through the backlog in the office so the supervisors don't have to dig through the backlog. We're backlog researchers. And even more importantly, we're trying to do a service of bundling, grouping work together. If we find a job that we're going to do next week, is there any other work we could do at the same time? If you're going to send a person way out there, is there anything else they could do? If we're going to do lockout, tag out on that, is there anything else we could do? That's the super service we're providing. We're not schedulers in the sense you think of a calendar. We're schedulers in the sense of backlog researchers to come up with a batch of work for the supervisors. So going along with the politics was my point I had almost lost track of. Jones, that's the supervisor's name, feels that one of the mechanics possesses a very high degree of mechanical skill. but the other mechanic is significantly less capable at the present time. So let's presume that's a new person. They're just not quite as experienced. And the supervisor is trying to say, well, for one of the persons, I have to be very careful what I pick out of the backlog. And you might tend to say, well, if they're getting, mechanic pay, they ought to be able to do all the mechanical work in the backlog. Well, that sounds good, but we do have a degree of variability in our craftsperson, and especially with newer persons. Now, in your company, you might have Mechanic 1, Mechanic 2, Mechanic 3, and I will tell you this, over the years, everybody somehow gets up to Mechanic 3, even if they're not capable of doing Mechanic 3 work. So it might behoove us to plan the simpler jobs as Mechanic 1, and the more complex, complicated jobs as Mechanic 3. And the supervisor, they might be wise to tell us, I have 2 Mechanic 3s, but one of them's, probably Mechanic 1 at the current time. And it just might be they need additional training, or they're just not as widely rounded. So what we did in this example here, and what we did at my company when I worked at the electric utility in Florida, we said, okay, we'll add a craft called tech. And that's really like a new mechanic. I'll just say junior mechanic, although we don't call people junior. And when I say mechanic, I'll just, in my mind, think senior mechanic work. So when I'm planning work orders, if I really need a superstar mechanic, I would plan it for a mechanic. But if just any mechanic can do this job, not an apprentice, but I do need a mechanic, it's more of a simple job, I would plan it for a tech. So we're going to say, because the supervisor's telling me that, they have one person that's a little green, okay, we'll say, okay, well, you're telling me you have a senior mechanic and just a newer mechanic. It's not a big deal. We don't go tell people you're only a junior mechanic. You only get junior mechanic work. It just makes a difference in we're putting the level of the skill required on the job. And you might assign a senior mechanic to a junior mechanic job. That's just, they could do them both. So I've got 5 persons. So I'm paying for 40 hours worth of persons for each of these. And by the way, we don't take out break time and lunch time and all this and that. They're being paid for 40 hours. On the planning side, when we're planning a job that's going to take all day, we call it a 10-hour job. If a job's going to take all week, we call it a 40-hour job. If a job's going to take half a day, that's a 5-hour job. So we're not taking it out there. If you take it out there, like a full day's work is 9 hours, you have to take it out here. We don't want to be double dipping on that. So I'm paying for 200 hours worth of persons, but not everybody's going to be here next week. Nobody's in training. If somebody was in, this is the paid hours. If somebody was in training, I'd want to take out those hours. They're not available for work assignments. Nobody's in training next week. The painter will be off for 2 days of vacation. Okay, well that's minus 20 for vacation. We call it vacation leave, sick leave, jury duty. We'll just call it leave. Minus 20 for the painter that. What we're trying to come up with is the available hours. So the painter is only available for 20 hours worth of new work for the next week. That's what we're trying to come up with, that we want to fully load that. Now I want to consider carryover work. We haven't talked about that much before, or I don't think we've talked about it before, because this is the best opportunity to talk about that. Carryover is work that's going on a job, it's going to carry over into next week. You're not going to finish it this week. You have to spend some hours on it next week. On my place here. Jones considers the current jobs in progress. The welder's current job will not be finished today and needs about 5 hours next week to finish it. What we're going to do is subtract 5 hours for carryover. That's going to carry over into next week. So only 35 hours are available for new work next week. And we're going to create the fully loaded schedule next week with these available hours. Even though that 5-hour job, 5 hours for that job will go into that daily schedule. The supervisor will deal with that. We don't worry about that. They're not going to get credit for schedule compliance this week because they didn't finish it. They're not going to get credit for schedule compliance next week because it's not even on the schedule. The easiest way to handle this job scheduling-wise for our objective, which is the fully loaded schedule, get a pop-in work order completion rate of extra proactive work, is not worry about it. Just take it out. And as long as the cumulative amount of carryover doesn't get over 20% or so of this total paid, you don't have to worry about it. So the easiest way works. Now, you could put 5 hours into the availability for that particular job, but that just seems like extra having to worry about it on our part. I'm thinking of, we don't want to take that work order back. We're not going to hand it back to them. They've just already got it. We're going to give them a new batch of work. I'm thinking physically of a stack of work orders. If you were to close this work order and then write a new work order to 5 hours, you're just really complicating things and you're gaming the system, trying to have high schedule compliance, which is not our objective to begin with. And you've totally messed up your database. How many times did that pump fail? Well, 2 times. No, just 1 time, but you wrote an extra work order because you're trying to game the system. So we don't want to do that. And this is just a guess at 10 o'clock in the morning. The higher skilled mechanic has been working a big job for the last couple of days and thinks it will take 5 hours next week to finish up as well. So this mechanic is saying, hey, you want me to come in this weekend and work this or just finish it next week? Well, how long do you think it'll take? I don't know. 4 or 5 hours, maybe. Half a day for sure. Okay, well, I'll just tell the scheduler that you already have 5 hours accounted for. You only have 35 hours worth of new work for the next week. And then you can't get those hours from subtracting the actual hours from the estimate. That's why I wanted to talk about it at this point. Here's an example here where a job was estimated for 10 hours. You've already spent 15 hours on it. It's not finished. How many hours are left? And the answer is not -5 left. That could be another couple hours. Could be 10 hours left on the job. Maintenance just has a wide variability. You're not sure exactly what's wrong with that pump, and you have slow mechanics and fast mechanics, and it's just the nature of the beast. So we don't worry about that. It's just a guess. Not only that, the supervisor and the welder might think we're not going to finish that job today. They might finish it today and actually start working on something else. It's all a guess about 10 o'clock in the morning, the last day of the week, which is Thursday in this case for this crew that works Monday through Thursday. All these guesses together come up with a valid availability that if we fully load for the schedule for next week, and if it's okay to break the schedule, we'll get a pop-in work order completion rate, which is our objective of scheduling. It's not to have a nuclear grade quantum mechanics, physics, calculus, calculator schedule. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to come up with the right batch of work as a goal to get that pop-in work order completion rate by defeating Parkinson's law. The other mechanic will finish a job and start a new job that we don't think they'll finish. So the supervisor is saying, you ought to be able to finish the work you have right now, right after lunch. I want you to go ahead and start on this other job. You probably won't finish it. I'll give you half a day next week. Now, in this example, it's just coincidentally 5 hours for each of the carryovers. That might not happen in real life. That's just for the example of the math here and everything. So 35 hours available for next week. The apprentice is going to be here the entire next week, available hours. Minus the 20 on the vacation, minus the 15. And that 15 hours out of 200-hour crew, that's not worth worrying about. That's not up at 20% or so. So we're going to be okay and not worry about it. 200 minus 20 minus 15 equals 165. We will 5, check our math, 5, 10, 15, carry the 1, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, plus 4 is 16. Our fully loaded schedule for next week, we would like to give this crew 165 hours worth of work. So that's coming up with a forecast. It's not a big deal. You can get that off of your electronic calendars at work for the vacation and the training. You can check with a supervisor as far as carryover, and it's just a guess, and it is not a big deal. We don't want the supervisors claiming wildly great amounts of carryover. And that'll show up in the schedule compliance. If we're claiming, huge amounts of carryover that are not real, we'll end up with above 90% schedule compliance. So we'll know we're gaming it in that regard. We're all adults. We're just trying to come up with a good batch of work to schedule our time for next week. So next episode, we'll actually sort the backlog, and we'll go from there. Thank you for joining me next time, and also look at my website for articles I've written in the past, palmerplanning.com, and I also have this YouTube channel. You can look at other episodes. Thank you very much.